Okay, we'll call the Public Safety Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Boyd,
Present.
Alderwoman Howard,
Present.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Present.
Alderman Muhammad,
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Here.
I have
Chairman Vaccaro.
present.
7 present, you have quorum.
I have a question. On my list, it shows Tamika Hubbard, then Carol Howard. Is that backward on my list?
Yes.
I
Okay.
think you must have an old sheet. The new sheet is
Yeah,
actually in the drive.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's how it is on the website too. They might want to correct the website. Okay, I'm sorry. There's no excused alderman. Everybody's here. Take motion for approval of minutes from the Monday, July 13th meeting, 2020.
Move for approval of July 13th meeting 2020.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Chairman Vaccaro.
Aye.
7 aye votes.
Okay. At request from the sponsors, Board Bill 97, sponsored by Christina Gracias, and Board Bill 114, sponsored by President Reed, asked to hold them to the next meeting because the COVID meeting went so long. So the only 2 things we're gonna have questions and answers with the chief. And thank you for coming, Chief. And then the resolution that's sponsored by me. I would ask Vice Chairman, do you want to handle both of them, or, I mean, there's only 2 things, and I guess I know I can't chair the meeting when we're doing my resolution. We're gonna start with the chief. It's your call. Do you want me to handle the chief one, or do you want to handle that? You're muted, Jeff. I'm sorry. Can't.
Yeah, you go ahead and handle this one. I'll handle the resolution.
Okay, thank you. So, Chief, you sent us a presentation, and hopefully everybody has gotten it or received it. I do know that we have questions. I also have follow-up questions from the prior meeting, that the one that goes back in June, and I guess what I'll do is let me just start with a couple, I think that if you can't address all these, we can do something again in the future, because the rest of it will be about just questions and answers. I know last time you felt you were ambushed, but I also get questions from people that are asking me if I can go over just a few things. One of the things we talked about was adding the more districts. And that was about 11 months ago. And still yet we're supposed to get some sort of report back within 6 months, although we were on break, I'll give it that. Where are we at on changing, making the talks on adding those districts? Because I honestly believe if we're not, I'm going to bring back the board bill last year, because I do believe strongly that we need more districts. And I'll let you start with that one. I just got about 4 or 5, and I'll keep it pretty short. Chief, you're muted. I'm sorry. Chief, you're
okay. I can mute. I think can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes, sir. So our crime analysis, our crime analysis unit took a look at a couple of different possibilities with respect to adding districts, none of which were, I guess, managerially feasible with our 129 officer deficit. And so what they suggested would be more like moving officers around, but not undertaking such a huge IT situation with respect to trying to add a district in the midst of only being short 129 officers. So that when they looked at that, they determined that that was not feasible for us to do right now.
Well, I'll talk to you more offline, but I would like to, I just think that we got to be moving in that direction. And it really doesn't do a lot, but it moves some of the manpower around. But, you know, my thing is, I honestly believe that. I know that we're short on dispatchers and everything else, and hopefully we're going to do that. You know, one of my concerns last time was the amount of chiefs, you know, majors and lieutenant colonels. And then I hear we even had an extra captain position, when it seems to me that we got more captains than we had when we had 9 districts. So I guess I find it a little bit hard, and I'm not, you know, when you say we can't do that, and again, I'm not trying to, if you want to get back with me on it, I'm perfectly willing. I'm not gonna, but I would like answers to these.
Yes, so I'm certainly willing to get back with you. I guess I should bring allow a type of presentation with our crime analysis division, so they actually can show you how they came to that conclusion.
Okay, and they're the ones that told me before they could even figure it out, it would take over 2 years when the association pulled it together in one day.
Right. So the analysis versus implementation, 2 different things. And so our crime analysis unit was able to determine that that was not feasible under the circumstances. But I will certainly be willing to allow them to make a presentation to you so that you can actually see why and what that amounts to.
So okay, that's fair. And I think what we'll do is when we do that, I will ask that the president of the association, as well as the president of the Ethical Society, also join in on that meeting, so we can have an overall discussion that I think might bear more fruit. And we'll get Judge Edwards in, and because it's something that a lot of people are not happy about. And throughout the city, the crime people talk about the triangle that's not working. It's just made the crime, you know, move out. And, you know, so I'll save that, but I'd like to set something up within the next week or 2 at the most. Okay. And again, about, are we adding another captain position?
No, we did not add another captain's position.
Okay. And then someone else sent me a thing. How many officers are on the street at any given time? I'm told that, like in the 2nd district, and I know they put some new officers over there, but I'm told in some of the districts that, especially when the stuff's going on downtown with the driving and all that, I'm told that we have as little as 2 officers on the street.
Well, that should never be the case. So each district has 9 beats. There's 6 districts, and so there's always a minimum. If there were only 1 officer in a car, that would be a minimum of 54 officers at any given point in time. That's not including traffic safety, special operations, SWAT mobile, or any specialized unit, or even not even including folks that are working in investigative services. So,
well, I'm talking about in the 2nd district.
Okay.
And I'm sure other districts, but let's just, in the 2nd district, people are telling me that, and I'll give you an example, but people are telling me that on any given night, and I'm talking about police officers saying this too, that on any given night, the 2nd district only has maybe 2 or 4 officers answering the radio calls. And, you know, and again, if you want to research that, I just want to give you a heads up. These are I'd like answers too. And I'll give you an example of something that really has been bothering me. So a lady has her phone stolen. You know, it's something, she calls 911. 911 refers her to the district. The district has her sit out in her car because she's not allowed to come in, and says, you can't fill something out over the phone. So they send the paper out to her while she's sitting in her car to fill out the paper. And then she has to have the paper run back in. Then 2 days later, after I really started complaining, I won't tell you what I was told, but because it upsets me, it probably wouldn't make you very happy, and I don't think it's, but so anyway, a few days later, after I moaned and complained, a detective called and said, oh, you got to fill out this paperwork, which she already filled out. Are we now telling victims of crime that you have to go to the department, stand outside on the street, make a phone call while they run out paperwork to you, you fill out, you don't get to talk to the officer, and then they run the paperwork back in, and then I guess it sits there. And this isn't a made up story. This is last week. It's a real story.
Yeah, that's certainly not what we normally do. I mean, I can't speak to the particulars about this particular incident, but that is not how we're still responding to calls as normal. So if somebody dials 911 and reports a theft, some of those theft reports can be taken over the phone, and then some of them can have, if you have some type of description, it can be, we'll have to dispatch an officer. If it's just a matter of documenting the fact that something is missing that wasn't there earlier, that can be taken over the phone. But the notion of somebody standing outside, that's not normal what you described. I would like to know more about that. And
we should talk offline because that's a true story. They were referred to the district who said, we can't go to you. We can't do this over the phone. You got to come here and fill this paperwork out.
Yeah, I've been certainly willing to talk to you at length about the more details of that particular case. But normally what will happen is that if person dials 911, we'll dispatch a car unless it's something that can be taken by phone. And if it's something that can be taken by phone, they'll be referred to our 24-hour call taking service, and they could actually put the report in that way.
What I'm going to do, because we had a very long meeting this morning, I'm going to send you a list of questions so that you could bring whoever you need to bring, and we can talk offline about this. In fact, actually, if we want to talk offline, there's at least 2 very similar instances where someone will call 911 and 911 transfers them to the district. And then how it's handled from there, to me, doesn't seem appropriate. And then, anyway, so I do have some concerns, but I'm going to move on. I think next up on the list would be Vice Chairman Boyd. So I'm going to pause myself and send questions. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chief.
Good afternoon.
I have a few questions, but I'm just thinking, since we did get this presentation, I think it would be beneficial if we're having a public meeting that you could actually present the presentation to the public. Are you good with Zoom and you can share and all that kind of stuff? Can you share the presentation and then talk us through it?
Yeah, I really gave you that presentation for historical purposes because I was going to talk more about what's going on right now in the city. Okay. That's got 10-year, 5-year, and 1-year comparisons on it. So I was going to talk you through if there were questions about that, but more importantly, I wanted to talk about what's going on right now.
Okay, well, I'd be interested in hearing that.
Okay. Go ahead. All right, I'll go through it. Good afternoon, members of the Public Safety Committee. I've asked Mr. Kennedy to distribute a historical perspective on crime stats in our city. The comparisons are a combination of 1, 5, and 10-year comparisons through August of any given year, so that this year can be placed in context with past year's performances. On June 1st, we were actually down 4 homicides citywide for the year, 69 versus 73 compared to the same time in 2019. However, by the end of the month, we were up 8 homicides citywide, 100 versus 92 compared to the same time in 2019. By the end of July, we were up 39 homicides, 153 to 114 compared to the same time last year. And by the end of August, we were up 45 homicides, 181 versus 136 compared to the same time last year. 32 homicides in June, 53 homicides in July, and 29 homicides in August. These summer homicides spread across 44 different neighborhoods in our city. Out of the ones wherein a likely motive could be determined, 51% appeared to be drug-related, 33% appeared to be personal dispute-related, and 15% appeared to be domestic in nature. Out of these summer homicides, 28 persons have been arrested and 10 are out wanted for homicide. Currently, there are at least 10 major cities experiencing significant increases in homicides this summer. Among them are Milwaukee, Memphis, Chicago, New York City, Houston, Los Angeles, Pittsburgh, Dallas, and Philadelphia. St. Louis is 5th on that list. 7 on the list have an increase of homicides of at least 30% compared to the same time last year. As you know, in response to this surge in homicides, 45 agents from Homeland Security were assigned to St. Louis to take part in Operation Legend. Along with Homeland Security agents, 5 troopers from Missouri State Highway Patrol have also been working in the target areas with our officers where many of these homicides were occurring at the time, which includes Walnut Park East and West, North Point, Hamilton Heights, and Wells Goodfellow. Additionally, the FBI assigned 2 agents for investigative assistance to the Homicide Division. As of this past Friday, September 17th, the current statistical totals for the Operation Legend are as follows: 515 arrests, including 9 homicide suspects from our cases and 2 fugitive homicide suspects, 1 from Kansas City and 1 from Georgia. They have seized 194 weapons during this operation. And then of those 515 arrestees, 205 will also face federal prosecution. Additionally, we have maintained a detachment of a sergeant and 4 detectives in the Homicide Division. We have adjusted the manning table, giving the Homicide Division an additional sergeant and 6 detectives. I might mention that we've had to endure this surge in violent crime while we've experienced increasing violence against police officers this summer, with 9 officers shot, and with Officer Tamaris Bohannon making the supreme sacrifice just a few weeks ago. We have had 120 protests throughout the city, many of which were downtown and many of which were manpower intensive, requiring us to draw resources from all districts and divisions. We have had to go to 12-hour days, and we've had to cancel recreation days, all while still remaining 129 officers short of our authorized strength. Obviously, officer safety, officer availability, and citizen safety with respect to COVID-19 has severely impacted our ability to respond as we normally would. With each officer-involved incident, whether in St. Louis or in the nation at large, along with the decisions made about the officers' future with their respective agencies, we have to be prepared to mobilize officers from across the city at any given time. And by the way, we are monitoring situations across the country as we speak. As for other crime categories across the city year to date, sexual assaults are down 14%. Robberies are down 15%. Our aggravated assaults are up 8%, and our total person crime is up 2%. Our burglaries are down 15%. Our larcenies are down 6%. Our vehicle thefts are up 6%. And our total property crime is down 5.5%. The city's total crime is down 3.5%. As you know, 2 pieces of important legislation were signed by Governor Parson yesterday. One removes the city's residency requirement for first responders, and the other addresses witness protection. I believe both will be advantageous to our crime fighting efforts. You have heard me mention many times that the residency rule is the #1 impediment to the recruitment of more officers. That statement comes directly from our recruiters who are trying to sign up persons for our department. When we are able to place 129 more officers on the street, that adds up to 21 officers more per district. That's a whole platoon of officers to address crime in the neighborhoods in each district. It goes without saying that this increase to officer visibility and enforcement would work in our favor to make our city safer. Another challenge that we always have grappled with is the willingness of witnesses to come forward, particularly when we have a homicide. A robust witness protection program will allow witnesses to assist us in our investigations without fear of retaliation as we await prosecution. As we look forward to the remainder of the year and going forward into 2021, we have added a component to our zone policing plan by creating mission zones in and around our already established crime reduction zones. Our crime analysis division will regularly update mission zones every 3 weeks to address any violent crime trends inside or outside of our established crime reduction zones. Our patrol officers will enter these zones and conduct self-initiated activity on an average of 45 minutes per shift. This method of focused self-initiated activity also allows for much easily measured goal setting and success monitoring. We will also continue our use of our Bureau of Specialized Enforcement in those zones to include Mobile Reserve, SWAT, Special Operations, and our Drug Enforcement and Investigation Unit. We will continue to work closely in these designated zones with the federal task forces to include the FBI, the DEA, ATF, and the U.S. Marshals. We will continue to support the efforts of Cure Violence by supplying consistent crime trend updates to the Urban League and the Employment Connection. We will continue the strategic expansion of technology with LPRs, high visibility cameras, and the expansion of ShotSpotter gunshot detection in various neighborhoods to include Walnut Park, Columbus Square, and College Hill. We also anticipate that the current investment of Operation Legend in arresting 515 dangerous individuals will net huge benefits in making our city, huge dividends in making our city a safer as we enter 2021. I'm now available for any questions, additional questions that you all may have.
Okay, I pretty much have the floor. Thanks, Chief. So I do have some questions. Number one, I appreciate having federal law enforcement in St. Louis to kind of help with some of our crime issues. It's very unfortunate that a couple of weeks ago, the 22nd Ward suffered 6 murders within 7 days. It's just out of control. The gun violence in the city of St. Louis is totally out of control, and I support whatever law enforcement support that we can get in the city of St. Louis to get a handle on this, because people in our communities are afraid. We are afraid for our grandchildren, or actually I have one grandchild. We're afraid for her and her friends to go outside and play on the trampoline, hearing gunshots in the alley, and maybe sometime they're just shooting up in the air, but we don't know. We often see cars driving up the street the wrong way. That's never, positive. It's a sign of, something's going on. So I appreciate all the support we can get with law enforcement across the country and the nation, as far as I'm concerned, to kind of help us deal with some of this negative activity. I want to be on record saying how disappointed I am that the governor signed off on the residency rule for police officers and other emergency responders, and not because I'm not supportive of our public safety personnel, but because I appreciate all city employees. And I don't think that, one city employee is any better than another city employee. We all sign on a dotted line to perform a job, period. Some people jobs are more risky than others. I understand that, but I think it's a slap in the face, to people that work in personnel, people that work in forestry, people that work in streets. I get a lot of, complaints about how hard it is to hire people to drive the trash trucks, to provide, maintenance on some of the vehicles. emptying trash is an essential service employee. You know, maybe it doesn't constitute an emergency where they have to run out there and save somebody's life by emptying the trash. But we are one city, and I just want to be on record to say how appalled I am at the fact that that happened. Certainly, we have an opportunity in November to let all city employees move out. There's, you know, certainly advantages and disadvantages. And what I'm curious, since it is what it is as far as lifting residency for police officers, how soon do you think that we'll be able to staff the police department to a near 100% level? How many months do you think it's going to take, since there's probably going to be this flood of recruits coming in that want to join St. Louis Police Department? I mean, that's the perception that I get from all this energy put on lifting residency. So I understand it.
So let me answer that, Alderman, the best I believe I can. And so, hey, on an average year, which was the last couple of years, our attrition rate and our hiring rate pretty much balances out. And so we weren't able to gain inside of a year, any net gain of maybe 5 or 10 officers. So if we doubled our efforts, then it would take a year. If we doubled, in other words, if the number of people coming in or interested in being officers doubles, then in 1 year you can still have an attrition and still account for 100 officers. I don't know how realistic that is, but certainly at a minimum of a year, unless I'm really underestimating folks coming in. I mean, I think that a reasonable hope would be that we double our recruit, that the people interested or people coming forward doubles. And so it's possible that we could make a lot of headway in the first year, when this first year elapses with that bill being passed.
Okay, so you're on record of saying within 12 months that we should be near 100%. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I'm saying that I'm on record as saying is that I can't tell just how quickly people will come in, but I'm giving you a comparison. If at the current rate of folks coming in, we aren't able to gain many officers at all. So if we doubled that, we would be able to get 100 officers. Okay. If we doubled that. So, but I'm saying, but I have no control. I can promise you that the mayor just met with the recruitment staff and others about how we're going to make sure that all of our media is in place, that we have folks in place to ensure that as we receive folks or we get an influx of personnel, that we'll be able to accommodate them and get them on the department as quickly as possible. But all of that really is speculation. I mean, I'm hoping that it won't impede people from coming, but at the same time, I have no idea how many will respond to this new possibility.
Now, let me ask you this, Chief. Didn't the mayor sign some new policy? I don't know if it was executive order, directive or something, basically waiving the residency requirement for new recruits to join the police department?
Right. She did a year or so ago. She introduced the possibility of waivers, but the problem was that because they were told that they'd have to renew every year, it was just a lot of uncertainty around what can happen with that waiver, and so there weren't very many people taking advantage of that.
Gotcha. Okay. Let me go back to redistricting, because I know that was a pretty contentious hearing when we talk about redistricting. I'm someone who's supportive of going back to a larger number of districts. The districts, and of course, I'm not law enforcement, but I think I process information in a pretty logical manner. It takes too long for somebody in 6th district to travel from 270 and Riverview all the way to O'Fallon Park, for example. I mean, that's a long haul, depending on what other police officers, what kind of calls they're on. So I'm definitely in support of expansion. I'm curious to actually see the analysis of how right now it's not practical. And when you said not practical, I didn't really hear why it's not practical, and maybe I missed something. So can you share it with me? Right, and you said right now.
Yeah, Alderman, primarily it's not practical because of what it does to current manpower. I mean, the Alderman mentioned, Alderman Vaccaro mentioned something about a deficit of officers in districts. I'm saying to take the current number of officers and spread them thinner and add another district is really would be extremely difficult to do. I mean, in other words, hey, whether those lines, the invisible lines that we call districts, really have very little to do to what the issue that you're addressing, which would be if I had enough officers closer by, they wouldn't have to come from 270 and go all the way down to Natural Bridge and Natural Bridge and Kings Highway. The point is that we need more officers to fill in those gaps, whether the line begins on Natural Bridge or whether the line is pushed over. We need more officers to fill in those gaps. More officers will result in more visibility, more enforcement, and quicker response time. But it seems like we just keep kind of going over the possibility of maybe if we spread them a little thinner, or maybe we put a few over here, it's just not feasible according to our crime analysis division.
Right. So Chief, I'm not sure I'm clear on when you said spreading them too thin, because to me, spreading them too thin is giving them more geography with the same amount of personnel. To me, that's too thin. But when you're talking about shrinking the districts and maintaining a relevant amount of manpower based on the need, because every district doesn't have the same type of calls for services, right? And so what's happening in the second district, and I don't know this for a fact, but maybe they don't require as many officers in the second district as they would in the sixth district, because there's so much violent crime in the sixth district and may require more manpower. So
I agree with you.
I'm not sure when you say making it thin, where you're coming from.
So I'm saying is that to add, so right now, in order to do that, I would have to take officers from districts to patrol your areas to create this new district.
Right.
But
they would have a smaller amount of area to cover if you take, so I mean, certainly you have to take some from some current district to make another district, but then you're making the district smaller, so it's more compact. So
yeah, I don't. Yeah, what the maps that I saw as possibilities didn't affect a whole lot of areas. So while I hear you that it may be some minor amount of adjustment, north, south, east, or west. The point is that you'd have to add. So each district, let's just say for round numbers, each district has 100 personnel. So you would have to take 20 some out of it, maybe 18 or so from each district to form a new district. Is what I'm saying.
Right. And
so that was clearly managerially unsound according to our crime analysis. But like I said, I do think that if folk could see exactly what we were talking about, it might make more sense to them.
Yeah, and so will you present the crime analysis report to us so it can make more sense? Because it's just really not making sense.
I think the alderman was at. So the question is, would you all want that to be a live presentation? I think we could arrange that. That's
up to the chairman. I mean, I'm interested in just getting a document personally, but it's up to the chairman on it. If he
and that way you can ask, instead of giving you a document, you can ask questions based on.
Okay, and that certainly be fine with me. I support that, but it's not my committee. So
okay,
if that's the wishes of Chairman Vaccaro, then maybe that would be helpful.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Chief. When we went down from 9 districts to 6 districts, how many police officers were we short?
I want to say at least as short as we are now, maybe a little more. That would be something that I'm not fully familiar with. How many were we short at the time? I do know at the time that Chief Dotson and Mayor Shamer were trying to get 200 more officers at the time. I do know that. I remember that quite well.
You mean Mayor Slay?
Mayor Slay, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, all right. I thought maybe you're talking about something I didn't know about.
Yeah, no, sir. Yeah, Mayor Slay and Chief Dotson had talked about a crime plan that included an increase of 200 officers.
So for as long as I've been alderman, we've been down 100 officers. So I've been alderman 17 years. So it seems like, I'm just gonna say conservatively, the last 14 years, we've been down 100 officers. So logically, if we were down 100 officers when we had 9 districts, now we have 6 districts, more geography. We're still about the same amount of officers. It goes back to, I'm having a hard time processing, how the analysis said it wouldn't work. So don't respond. I'm just talking out loud. I look forward to your presentation.
Sure.
No feasible under, okay. So let's talk a little bit about dispatchers. So I know there's frustration with constituents that call 911, they're put on hold. It almost sounds absurd. Like, how does that happen? But I'm guessing it happens because we're short dispatchers. Would that be
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Okay, and tell me, so what if a person hangs up, and because it's been 5 minutes and they haven't gotten a response? Or do someone call them back? Or, I mean, how does that work? Do you just drop the call and keep going?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what happens if they hang up. I just know that they will certainly get an answer in the order of how that call was coded. In other words, if the person a code one, you know, like a shooting or a life safety issue right off the bat, that's going to get an immediate dispatch. Some of the ones where they're talking about suspicious persons and what have you will not get an immediate response, but certainly will get a response.
Right. No, I'm clear on that. That's if you get through. But if I've been on hold for 5, 6 minutes and I just hang up and I felt like I had an emergency, but I'm so frustrated, I'm like, I just hang the phone up. That doesn't mean the emergency doesn't still exist. I'm hoping maybe somebody else called and they can hang on longer than I.
Yeah. So if they, I believe if they hang up, they have to start over. But
Okay.
but to answer your question, we're 22 dispatchers short.
Okay. And our last question, because is, you gave us some examples of how in other cities crime has spiked. Why do you think crime is spiking the way it is in the city of St. Louis since June?
Yes, sir. So some criminologists have speculated, even our own Dr. Rosenfeld, who comments on these types of issues quite often. Some have attributed it to being closed in with COVID. Some have attributed to the depression around not only having been isolated through COVID, but additionally a lot of job loss. And so there's a lot of despair and anguish over the whole situation in the city, not to mention across the nation, not to mention the civil unrest that has gone along with it. So it's some criminologists say there'll be years trying to figure out what is the consistency between several major cities going up 30% in violent crime. It's something yet to be determined, but they believe that COVID isolation, lack of jobs, and other social issues have caused this increase.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And we are going to hold something. And Alderman Howard, hang on 1 second. I just want to answer. So 911, if you hang up, they have to go through the trouble of calling you back. So it isn't you have to start over. And right now they are putting dispatchers on 2 districts. So in other words, if a dispatcher just answered the first district, they're paying like first and second, which not only ties up, but it also makes it very dangerous for the police because they're dispatching on 2 districts instead of paying attention to one.
Right. So one of the challenges with that, Alderman, is the fact is, first of all, we are in line to hire some more dispatchers. So that's gonna, but I think there may be 6 or 7 to be taken off that list pretty soon. So that'll cut it down. But you bring up a good point because they have had to patch districts together and merge them. But again, hey, our dispatchers get paid. City police dispatchers get paid less than city fire dispatchers, and additionally, all of them get paid less than the folks in the county. So our communication division have oftentimes been a training ground for other dispatchers. Those are just cold hard facts.
I agree with that. The other thing that I would ask that you have for the next meeting, because we're going to talk about manpower, I'd like to know how many staff members you have, how many staff members every lieutenant colonel has, how many staff members each major has, and how many staff members each captain have. I'm pretty sure if you add them up, there's going to be quite a few. And so it's also, because as you're talking to me, people are texting me, and that's one of the things they're asking me. They said that we are so top heavy. How many staff members do you have?
I have 3 staff members.
And that's all you have?
I have one lieutenant, and 2 sergeants.
Okay.
And most of the most of the senior level commanders have a sergeant and an officer to help them, administrative officer and an administrative sergeant.
So, so do me a favor, as we prepare for the next meeting, which in the next week or 2 weeks, I would ask that you go ahead and get me a manning table for the committee. We don't, if you don't want to share it outside the committee, that's up, but I'd like to get a manning table and an assignment list. So in other words, not only just we have blah amount of captains, blah amount of majors, I'd like their assignments also, so that if who's assigned to where, and so that it's accountable. So that if you say you only have 3, and at the end of this list, we got more, less off, so be accurate in what you're saying. I'd like a manning table and an assignment.
And a organizational chart.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Like where everybody's at. Okay. And then I'll check on it from there. So, okay, I'm sorry. Alderwoman Howard, it's your floor now. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Chief Hayden.
Good afternoon.
We met about a year ago, and some of the things we asked for was, the allocation of the, I guess, for lack of a better, those wearing white shirts, I guess, would be lieutenant and more, those ranking lieutenant and more, how many and where they're located. I don't think we've gotten that, Mr. Chair. Have we received that? Alderman Vaquero.
People are texting me stuff as the meeting's going on. We haven't received anything. Promises, and I could send you stuff that the association sent me, promises that were made.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to know that maybe I missed it. It's been a year and
No,
my memory isn't what it used to be, and trying to keep up with things isn't, this is, we have a lot going on and have had as the police commissioner has also. But I just wanted to know if any communication was received. So no.
And I understand that. And to me, what aggravates me is that as the people that get the most yelled at by constituents, and I'm not going to get into, but we're treated like we're the lowest form of people on the planet. The street department has more say in what happens in the city than we do. We're the ones that get yelled at. We're the ones that say, why aren't the police showing up? We ask the questions. I think it's very disrespectful of the administration, the chief and their staff to basically blow us off. But
okay. I want to go on with my.
Can I comment on that? I mean, who's blowing you off, Alderman? I mean,
have we Chief, I don't want to get in an argument. I know you guys.
I'm just trying to figure out who. I don't quite understand that statement.
You. Why haven't we received any of the information that we asked for on the October? It was all the way going back a year ago. And I can go through what we asked for. A year ago in October, now you're gonna make me find my papers again.
Joe, can I go ahead and continue my questioning along those lines?
Okay, no, please do, but I can tell you that we were promised stuff literally a year ago, and I have not received it. I will mute myself.
Okay. Chief Hayden,
Yes,
the last time you were before us, you said that you were implementing a new reporting system. Has that been finalized, and is that all up and running at this point?
No, ma'am, it's not up and running yet. It's the go live date is in January the 1st. And so it's had the testing to go along with it, but it was the target date was January the 1st. And so it's met all its requirements, but it never was supposed to go live until January 1st of 2021. And so I believe it's on target. for a new records management system.
So
I can't-
what are the officers using for reporting at this time?
They're using the previous one, which is called iLead. So this will be an upgrade to, it'll be a lot more user-friendly. It'll be something more consistent with the nation. It'll be more consistent with what the FBI requires. And so that's in the Department of Justice. So they're using the old one. We're going to have a newer, more robust records management system in January.
So is this a system that is you're inventing, or is this something that you're purchasing and just putting into effect? I guess you know, I know if you're actually doing a custom system that is just unique to St. Louis, that would take some time. Is this I guess I want to say canned type of system that is used in other departments that we just have to plug in our information to?
Yes, ma'am. It's called NIBRS, National Incident Based Reporting System, and it's what the FBI is going to. So the FBI.
So it's a program that's out there, and it's a matter of plug and play kind of thing, I guess, and just migrating data over.
Oh, I don't know if it's just that simple, but I do know that it's a standardized reporting system.
But I guess I'm looking at the notes from the last meeting, and then you said that it would take 6 months last October. So where are we? We're
6
a
months
year
and I'm sorry, 6 months to do exactly which
to
operation.
have this system up and running, because that was the reason you couldn't give us data, was because that system was being implemented last October. And at that meeting, what I have notes are of that it would be 6 months from October that this system would be in effect. And here we're a year later, and now you're telling me January.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, you know, the sign in the bar, cold beer tomorrow. You know, I'm wondering when we're going to get to tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am. So if I misstated that, the go live date on the new records management system was always January 2021.
Oh,
What we were talking about is how quickly we could also add a some type of redistricting piece to that.
mm-hmm.
That's what I was trying to get time on.
Oh, well, then we must have all misunderstood that. So I guess the other thing I would like to know is, as this comes, how many, we're down, how many officers?
We're down 129 officers as we speak.
Okay. So the bulk of the officers are placed where the bulk of the crime is? Is that what the sort of we're doing the, I don't know, I can't remember what Dotson called it, where he sent officers where they were needed.
Right. So kind of to tie in a statement that Alderman Vaccaro made, as well as Alderman Boyd, what would be a good idea to kind of offset some of the imbalances that we have with our current districting is that as we added officers, that we would place them, you know, in other words, we would give the most needed districts the officers as they come on. So in other words, instead of undoing what we have right now, as we add officers, that we would put them in the appropriate places so they can accommodate the differences in the districts.
So how is that decided, the most appropriate places or the most needed places? How is that decision made? My
recommendation would be to put it where most of the violent crime occurs. So you stick to the where's the most homicides, shootings, aggravated assaults, robberies. What are the most demanding? Because albeit some districts may be busy, I would say that our city would want to be more focused on violent crime than they would be property crime. So that would be certainly one way to do it.
I understand that, and I wouldn't want to cheapen life, but at the same time, we have people here that have, maybe not violent crime, but they're crime victims also. And so, I mean, I don't want to make this a north side, south side thing, but we have violent crime here as well. And we have people shooting all over, the other night sitting out, I had gunshots, and I don't know what happened, but anyway, this is no cakewalk down on the south side either. And I guess, what I would like to see is that we have some way of responding to people north, south, west, wherever, And people, when they call, they get a person that will say, you know, we'll send somebody out. Not, oh, we don't have anybody in the area. I mean, I get calls all the time that, you know, they call the police and the dispatcher. I've done it myself. I've called and gotten hung up on. I've called and had no one answer. I've called and been told, oh, well, we don't have anybody in the area. Now that's very disconcerting when I'm reporting that there was gunfire through my house, that there's no one in the area. So, I mean, I can't understand. You know, we need dispatchers. If we need dispatchers, maybe we need to up the pay. We need to find some solutions to this. And if we can help you, we're more than willing to do that, but we need some communication.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I have no more questions. Thank you.
So Alderwoman Tamika Hubbard, how you doing? You're up. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and thank you, Chief Hayden, for coming before us. It's unfortunate that it appears that you are always in the hot seat, but I guess that's what comes with being a chief. And I just know that my constituents are very frustrated. I'm extremely frustrated, and I just feel like whether we're down 100 officers, like my colleague from the 22nd said, we've been down 100 officers over 17 years or however long he said. I just feel that as a department or as a city, we need to be open to trying different things. The whole residency requirement thing, you know, some of us, we flipped our vote, even though we were against it, but we were in support of putting it before the voters. Of course, the state did what they did or whatever. So it's our expectation that that would open the floodgates. So a year from now, when we're still 100 officers down, because there's many things that play into that, the pay, people simply just don't want to be cops anymore, considering the climate. So what's our plan? We can't keep saying that we don't have enough officers. With the officers that we have, what's our plan? And if in fact that we don't get additional officers, how do we use the officers that we have? If redistricting is an option, let's try it, because what's the worst that can happen? Our crime is through the roof. It's horrible. Response time is terrible. Even when I call the police, and sometimes I like to be anonymous, but when I call and say who I am, sometimes the officer never shows up. Or if by the time they show up, the guys that are out here firing their weapons in the city park, they're gone. So I think that we need to just go above and beyond. If it means taking some white shirts out the station and putting them on the streets, we need to do that. And then my other issue is that, I mean, it's unacceptable to still keep waiting for information. I mean, we've talked before, we've talked about this a gazillion times when we ask for specific data. I don't know if it's just not being communicated, or it's sitting on someone's desk, or it's not being given to us, but our constituents want answers, and we can't keep saying we're down XYZ officers. So I would be open to any plan that we have or can make, just to try to invoke some type of change in our neighborhoods, because that our constituents are crying out. And in reference to the uptick in crime, whatever, I don't care what any experts say, you can't make me believe that people that have recently lost their jobs are out committing crimes. That's just not something that you decide to do overnight. So I think it's probably an influx of the criminals that we've already had. There's an uptick. I mean, they never stayed in the house anyway during the lockdown. So I don't believe that to be true, but I just know that as a city, we need to put every hand on deck. We need to do a thorough overview of our manpower. And it's a blessing that we have all this additional overlay with other law enforcement entities, but a year from now, we shouldn't still have some of the same problems. I know crime doesn't disappear overnight, but at least you need to be able to come back before us and say, look, we tried this, we tried that, this worked, that didn't work. We've tried to do this, you know, give us something to tell the public, because, you know, they're beating us up over it, and it's unsafe in our communities. And I am grateful for the cameras that finally got placed in my ward after waiting 2.5 years. But those cameras simply moved the crime 1 block away. And so what I'm going to do is put another camera there. So I'm all in support of cameras everywhere throughout the city, because if they commit crimes, they need to know that they're going to be doing it on camera. And I just hope that our real-time crime center is hands-on enough to actually get some convictions off those cameras, because until you get some, you know, they don't have any respect for them. So it's just my hope that, you know, we can always blame, you know, everything on everything else. But I think that when you're in the leadership capacity, as all of us are in, you have to be open to some type of change. If it were me, I would be willing to do the redistricting. Even if in your opinion it spreads us thin, then I would love to come back and say, well, look, I tried what you all said. We went back to 9, but the crime is still the same. But you have to make some strides in the direction of what people are, you know, saying that's an issue. And so I just hope that a year from now, when we've opened up residency, I hope that we can see some change. You know, I hope that we can say, okay, well, we didn't get all the officers that we wanted, but we did this or that. So that's all I have. I know sometimes you feel like you're getting beat up, but as the chief and as elected officials, we are all in the hot seat, and we all have to make some hard statements and make some hard change to get rid of this crime that's in our community.
Yes, ma'am. So one thing that you mentioned, hey, when we just right now, if we were talking about, hey, let's put more officers where most of the violent crime is occurring, that I think I would get a lot of resistance from some of the people that are on this call. And that's kind of what I'm saying. Hey,
who would resist that? Who would resist that? I mean,
I
think in our community, we rather be over policed than under policed. I mean, that's because we trust in the training of our officers. I know there's been some hiccups along the way, but I think when you get this influx of officers, if you would strategically place them in where the high crime areas, or I'd be blown back by some of my colleagues who will resist that, because at this point we have no other recourse. We need to try any and everything that's available to us to stop this crime, to keep us safe.
My suggestion would be to prioritize violent crime. If we believe we're going to do well in recruitment, that my suggestion would be to prioritize violent crime as where officers that are coming on get placed. I know that may not be something that everybody supports, but that would be what I would want to do.
Okay, so can you tell us, I don't know if you have the data in front of you, but in your most high crime areas, can you tell us how many officers are placed in those areas?
What I can tell you is that regardless of that the districts each district is cut up into 9 pieces of a pie. And so each one of those is a beat. So what I can tell you is that no matter how violent it is, whether it's Wells Goodfellow, whether it's Hyde Park or what have you, that it's only one beat that covers. So there's one beat. There are potentially 2 officers in that car, but there's only one beat per area, and that was decided 5 years ago. And so what you want to do is double up some of those. In other words, what I would do is double up some of those beats. But again, that requires me to remove persons from people that are counting on officers in addition for visibility, what have you. In other words, if we prioritize them by violence, then some of you would have less officers in your districts, and some of you would have more.
So what are we currently doing? Just even in those violent areas, we're not placing additional manpower. Like they stated, what happens in this?
So we're placing additional manpower by self-initiated activity, some from special enforcement, some from the officers within that district. But the point is that the pie was divided up evenly before I came on.
We are well aware of that. And so we know that how that pie was divided up, that it's not working. I mean, you've been in your capacity how many years now? That pie is not working. And if you talk to the officers who are actually on the ground, they express the most discontent with that. They say that it straps them really thin when they have to go all the way across town to get to a call. So, I mean, and then some of them may not be available. They may be stuck in the station doing reports or whatever. So we just have to figure out a way to address all of that. I mean, right now, we're not doing it. Plain and simple, we're not doing it because our numbers are still up there. Have you taken a look at the specialized units? Have we de-densified some of those? Do we have them working outside of their unit to assist where the need is?
Absolutely. And that's the other thing. All of those units, everybody is sharing our deficit. And so everybody is operating with less officers, whether it be the homicide division, whether it be mobile reserve. We all operate, whatever we have to do, we operate under staffing in order to account for the 129 officer deficit. I wish that weren't the case. And that's the thing. Hey, one thing we could do is change some of the things we respond to. But again, hey, our citizens are used to getting forced to go on accidents. They're used to, as Alderman Vaccaro mentioned, they're used to, kind of hands-on service, even if they just have a theft. So one thing could change, that we could only respond to acts of violence, and then we could make appointments, if you will. Some cities do this. Sometimes civilians go to burglaries 2 or 3 days later. So all I'm saying is that, hey, what we're accustomed to doing and what we potentially could do could be very significant changes in how St. Louis does business altogether. But again, if we can look at a bunch of options, but it will take the cooperation of the alderpersons to be willing to do some things differently. And if it means less visibility, then that's what it would mean. Unfortunately, nobody has really offered that as an option. I hear everybody very interested, but hey, every time I go to a community meeting, they want more enforcement, more visibility, and shorter response time every single time. So sometimes you're at a limit of what you can do with the current number of officers you have.
Well, Chief, with all due respect, the Board of Aldermen is not micromanaging the police department, and clearly the police department doesn't listen to everything that we say, because we've still been waiting on information and we haven't gotten it. So I have a hard time wrapping my head around that notion that it's something that you could do, but you won't do it because of the blowback you may get from the Board of Aldermen, because clearly we've been blowing back for a long time and nothing has really changed. In my area, we lack the visibility, and of course we probably lack the manpower too. So if you look at the data and look at it from a standpoint that, okay, we're going to put a lot of our resources toward violent crime. Look at those numbers as far as calls for service opposed to property crimes or whatever, and then tell us specifically how you are allocating those resources, because we can't keep going back to the past not cut right. We know that that's not cut right. And although I know my colleagues in less crime-ridden areas, they definitely want someone to pick up the phone when they call. But I'm pretty sure that they would understand that a call for a shooting or a murder or something would take precedence over someone's car being broken in. So I think we need to kind of get past that. And I'm pretty sure all of us here that sit on public safety are rational thinkers, and we know where the manpower needs to be as far as violent crime, because that's an issue for the city that hurts tourism, that hurts everything. So I just hope that we can't keep saying this will stay like this as long as we're 100 officers down or whatever. So we need to work with the resources that we have until we are fortunate enough to get more resources. And we need you to tell us what it is that you need. I think we all go above and beyond to support our police officers in every initiative. I know that I do. You can check my voting record on that. But we have to do a better job. We need the police department to be more open to listening to some of the suggestions that are being made, because one thing we all can agree on, whatever we're doing now is not working. So we have to do something differently. And when we ask for plans, or something has been brewing or coming up 3 years from now, and we're still saying it's not feasible, and then we open the floodgates to get all of these hirees in, and then 2022 we're still down 100 officers and our crime is still through the roof, then we'll know it's not working. And I can't hold you accountable for all crime, because there's many things that play into it. There's social issues that play into that too. But we just need to know that you are going above and beyond, and you are at least listening to, or if it were me, I would try it. So if it didn't work or it went against my better judgment as the chief, I can say, well, I tried this and it didn't work. But to keep saying it's something that we can't do, or to keep saying it's something that, oh, well, I can't do this if we're such and such officers down, that's not sitting well with us in this body. You know, it's not sitting well with anybody. And that's why when we have these meetings and you come before us, you keep hearing the same discontent with how we're doing things.
Right, but I would tell you, with all due respect, that if the data doesn't support a move like that, I mean, people say, well, just try it. I don't believe in trying something just to show people that it wasn't working. I'm saying
the data is the crime. The data is the crime. The crime is not supporting anything that you are doing right now. Look at that data. So what other recourse do you have? We're in a horrible space.
As you mentioned,
that logic is not resonating. It's not working. It's not working at all.
As you mentioned, calls for service, types of call for service. That's the data I'm talking about. I mean, naturally, crime.
And is that having an impact on our crime? Is that having an impact on our numbers based on the model that you are using to police this city? Is that working? It's not working.
In some instances, well, I mean, I would not call it a total failure. I mean, certainly we've had mixed results.
Tell us where it's working. Tell us, and I'll table the rest of my question. Just tell us where the current model that's in place is working.
I can tell you where the current model is in place has worked and wasn't as successful at first. So year one, the current model that we had resulted in a citywide significant decrease in violent crime. We had challenges with that as we added more areas of focus, more crime reduction zones. We were challenged by the ability, again, shortage of manpower, but the ability to have that same level of focus in one area where most of the crime was happening. So there's been a give and take. There's been mixed results. It's not ever since we've done the rectangle that nothing has worked. You've had mixed results, and then of course some of the things are out of our control. But at the end of the day, I think that the bottom line is more resources. What we need. We're trying to do the demands of our city seem to outweigh what we have in the way of resources, and that's why there's so many complaints, because we just don't have the resources to address every single thing in which people would prefer that it be dealt with. Some cities don't have that problem. Some cities don't have any recruiting problems.
So tell me this, and you fact check me on this if it's not right, because it's something that I heard. Are we up more murders than all of last year at this date that we are currently at?
Yes, we are. A couple of days ago, we had more homicides already than we had all of last year. That is correct. We had 198 right now. We were at 190, 194 for all of 2019. That is correct.
No further questions.
I'm going to get to Alderman Hubbard, but I do want to, because I listened to what Alderwoman Hubbard said, and I will say right now that I worked along with Alderman John Collins Muhammad, and we drew in the one extra district based off of crime, working with blue shirts. The guys are actually out there working on the street. We drew that map, and that map made sense to the people that were working on the streets, and the crime data that you're saying that takes years to get, they were able to get it to us. Then we sat down with officers from all different areas of the city. The officers that are on the street say there's too many white shirts, and they're the ones that helped with John Collins Muhammad's bill that he was a sponsor, I was a co-sponsor, that drew the districts. And then there was supposed to be a conversation with you, Jimmy Edwards, the association, and John, and that did not happen. John was encouraged to hold off, which he did, and then the season ran out, and nothing was accomplished. No meetings were held. If you don't listen to the people that are out there, and I learned that in the car wash business, the guys that were doing the cars, that were drying the cars, knew more about the car wash business than I did. Every time I tried to cut $1, they would explain why that didn't work. we, and I'm just speaking for John, Alderman Collins, Muhammad, so you should just call him John, trying to be respectful. We sat down, we did a lot of work, as well as the association, and we didn't just go with them. We went with officers throughout the city, and we came up with a reasonable map that shrunk some of the districts, that took all the different people that are downtown, which is also a very large amount, all the traffic's out of downtown. And we took those and we redistributed into each district. God forbid we should have a traffic car in the second district. I got to beg. And then they say, well, it's up to traffic. I stood out there with 2 officers trying to get them to write a ticket. They had to call the captain. This was last week, to see if it's okay to write a ticket. I'm, you know what, Chief, I'm, when you say this stuff, I get really aggravated. I get all kinds of texts from people, but I also get aggravated. We came up with what we felt was a good plan. It was completely trashed. There was no, well, this is the good part, this is the bad part. I commend my colleague, Alderman John Collins Muhammad. I commend him for the hard work that he put in there. And I am not happy with that. Well, we'll talk later. They promised a meeting. We never had a meeting. They promised to bring the association. That didn't happen. So what they did is they completely trashed it and then felt, oh, good. It's a new session. It's the end of a session. Well, that's gone. My plans are, I'm going to bring that back up probably within the next meeting or 2. But when we try to do something, and like the Alderwoman Hubbard said, Tamika Hubbard said, we try. We're the ones that are getting yelled at by our constituents. We're the ones that are saying that there's accidents, there's speeding. You know, and I'm not going to take everybody's time up, Chief, but what I'm saying is when Alderman Collins Muhammad worked hard on a bill, and we met and we took months to go through, and we talked to officers, and then you guys just decided, well, we'll play the clock out. That's disrespectful. And it doesn't matter because you don't see the disrespect. But I can tell you almost every alderman sees the disrespect. And you're not listening to us, you're telling us. And if you listen, and if you listen to your officers on the street that are afraid to speak up because they're afraid to be transferred, beat up or something, you know, maybe you'll learn something. But anyway, I'm going to move on. Alderman John, you're up. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here. I don't have a lot to say. I do share some of the same frustrations and sentiments of my colleagues as it relates to getting information and as it relates to seeing this change in violent crime or just crime period in our city. You know, even right now with the project that's undergoing on Natural Bridge to make it safer, residents and business owners are asking me, why don't you just put more police on the street or just put police on Natural Bridge? And I have to tell them, well, we can't. And when we did have the traffic division on Natural Bridge, it did work for a short period of time. But of course, Natural Bridge is such a long road from Goodfellow to Salisbury. But Chief, my question is, what are we doing to make St. Louis safer? Because I mean, the number one issue in my ward is residents feeling safe. And I have a resident every day tell me, I'm looking to move out of the city, or I'm looking to move in South City because I don't feel safe. I can't raise my family here. And when they say these things, I don't know what to say back. I don't have the data to show or to point to say, we are reducing crime. I can't say we are making strides to reform public safety, or we're making strides to put more officers on the street, or we are doing this. And I know our officers are working hard. I know that for a fact. But what are we doing? Like, what information can you share that would not be a detriment to the police department or our crime intelligence division? What are we doing to make St. Louis safer, particularly North St. Louis?
Right. So Alderman, as you know, you mentioned that you believe the officers are working very hard. I got some very competent commanders out there. I got an acting commander in your ward. But the point is that, hey, I think I believe that we're doing everything we can to make citizens safer. Part of it, though, is not, as you've mentioned, hey, part of it is not all law enforcement. You can't necessarily arrest or enforce your way out of some of the things that Alderwoman Hubbard mentioned. I mean, hey, some of the despair and lack of jobs or what have you is not just an enforcement piece. So we try to, of course, make arrests when we can get cooperation. You know, we're not going to make arrests when people won't cooperate. It's kind of hard to do. But I mean, hey, a lot of times when there's a lot of violent crime, there are a lot of people that won't tell us what happened, starting with the person, the victim. If the person survives, hey, the person that is like pulling teeth for getting additional information is the person to whom it happened. And so, hey, folks choose to no snitch and those types of things. So very challenging. But I mean, hey, I think that if each of you, and I believe that you do, have strong relationship with your district captains and your majors, I think a lot of your questions could be answered a lot of times. I don't know. I'm assuming that those relationships are good ones. But I mean, hey, if your citizens are asking questions about what are we doing, have the meeting. I've been Alderman Boyd. She had I've been in a virtual meeting, and so hey, even when we can't come out, we can still respond to citizens' concerns and requests. You and I rode around Fairgrounds Park, and you had a concern about what's going on over there. So I'm saying we're available and we're accessible as best we can, but it's gonna require all us working together. And I think that the captains and the lieutenants and the sergeants of the district, as well as the officers, are empathetic to everything going on. But it is very challenging. We'll have to work better together. But certainly, I don't think that you all should have to answer for the police department. Get those captains, get those majors, get those lieutenants out to those meetings, so you don't have to field all those questions. We can answer those questions better, but we are limited by resources.
And I get that, Commissioner. I do. The reality is, the alderman is the first line of defense, or the first person any resident goes to in their communities. So even when you say call the police department, they're going to call the alderman. When you say call forestry, call refuge, call CSB, they're not going to do that. They're going to call the alderman, and we're left with these unanswered questions and these basically imaginary answers that we're giving. And I do believe you are accessible. Anytime I call you or text you or email you, you always respond. As you just said, we rode around my park to address a nuisance situation. You are accessible, and I appreciate that. But the data that we keep asking for is not accessible, and I think that's the biggest frustration that you are seeing right now today, because we honestly want to see the data, and we want to know what can we do to help. How do we create effective policy to help you and to help the police department combat crime, and we're not getting that. And I think that's the biggest issue that we're having today. I don't think this is not about your leadership or about the leadership of your subordinates. I think it's about every time we ask for data from the police department, we never get it. Absolutely never. And then just with crime on a continuous spree, and it's increasing and increasing and increasing. And we are steady looking for innovative ways to address crime, and it's just hard to do without the data. And as policymakers, as legislators, we don't know what to do because we're not really getting the full cooperation from your crime analysis division or your IT division as it relates to crime data, crime statistics, and what it looks like to, to fight crime on a neighborhood base. We're not really getting that, and that's what's hard and difficult. Again, I appreciate your access, and I know my community does as well. I know people in my community got your cell phone number, they call you and you always answer, and I appreciate that. We just want to know, how do we help the police department move forward as it relates to deterring violent crime in our neighborhoods? That's all. I appreciate you, Commissioner, and I appreciate the police department. And I want to go on record as the Vice Chairman, Ned, I am very disappointed in our governor in signing legislation circumventing our voters here in the city of St. Louis when they had that opportunity to vote for residency come November. I'm disappointed in that. But again, I do appreciate you, Chief, and I appreciate your department. But I think I think it shows we have to do something different, and we have to be real innovative and creative in addressing this crime epidemic in our city. Thank you again, Commissioner. No further comments or questions, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, Chairman Vaccaro had to step out real quick. I'm not sure, I don't have my sheet up on who's next in seniority. Alderman Boyd.
It's Alderwoman Boyd, Mr. Vice Chairman, then Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Okay, I was thinking it was Alderman Boyd. Alderman Boyd, do you have any questions or concerns? You're still on mute, Alderwoman.
Okay. Hold on. Can you hear me?
We can hear you and we can see you.
Oh, good. Okay. This technology is not happy today. And I hear all the colleagues that are frustrated, and I hear what's going on. But I guess my frustration is, Chief, it seems that you all are not listening. You're not listening to the residents. You're not listening to the legislators. And the reason why I say that, our safety committee did a call to action. You all came to the meeting. We did an ask. We sent the information out and asked, where are we with this? And as the previous Alder people said, nobody ever responded to us. And so how can I explain Alderman Collins, John Collins Muhammad? He might say people are threatening to leave. I have people that are leaving. I am helping a lady now to find her another location because she says she hasn't slept for 3 or 4 nights. And then when the officers come, they told her she needs to move. So I'm just like, so what are we supposed to do? When we have a triple homicide on Floyd and you put a camera after the fact. And I told Coombs and I told Allen, I said, it's one thing to put the cameras out there, but if nobody is arresting anybody or stopping anybody from what they picked up, they figure nothing's gonna happen to them. So it's no repercussion. So as Alderwoman Hubbard said, why aren't we working together to come up with a plan? And it seems, I don't know about the other Alder people, but it seems every time I come to them and say, why don't you do this? When they had a safety committee about speeding, they said, we know you short staffed, so why one week you don't put a shell car? They think it's a car there. Then move that car and put somebody there the next week, or put a radar the next week. I mean, residents were giving you suggestions, giving your officers suggestions. Nobody utilized the suggestions that they give them. I had a lady come to me today. She said her Lexus has been hit 3 times. Her insurance company has canceled her. She said when they had the murders on Floyd, she had it on camera. Nobody ever asked her could we look at your camera? And that's not the first time people have told me that. They have the information for you people, your people, and they won't even utilize the cameras. You tell people to get cameras and then you won't utilize them. So I'm just kind of confused. I'm like Alderwoman Hubbard, do you all want the help, or do you want us to kind of give you information, to give you direction on how we feel you could best serve with the staff that you have? A lot of them, Alderman Boyd said he's been hearing for 20 years that you all have been 100 man short. I've been hearing it longer than that. And everybody that comes to a meeting said, I said, don't do that. Don't keep insulting these residents like that. And so my question is, you don't respond when people are asking you for stuff. You putting cameras out, but nothing happens, or it's after the incident has occurred. And so I don't know. I just, I had a lady was sitting on her porch and she got shot in the shoulder. I mean, I don't know, Chief. I don't know what to tell people. I'm just as dumbfounded as Hubbard, Muhammad, Boyd, Howard. I don't know what to say. I don't know I can't even protect you because I don't know what to say. And then when you all give your numbers out and say, call if it's a problem, then when they call the acting captain, Combs will respond, but when they call the acting captain, now people call me, she don't respond, we don't hear nothing. So, I mean, I don't know what we supposed to do. That's just my question. I don't know. I know it sounds stupid to keep saying the same thing over and over again, but I don't know. I don't know what to tell people when they tell me stuff and they ask me questions. I don't have an answer for them. And like I said, Coons responds. She especially email, you text her, she's right on it. But besides that, when I talk to these officers, and me personally, I'm just having a problem with my police officers working 12 hours because they're not going to be as sharp as they were at 8 hours.
Right.
It's impacting their safety. And so now I'm looking at, we have employees that it's a safety issue for them. And then we got these fools out here that wants to shoot at them. And so that reflects on as sharp as they was if they would just work at 8 hours and a couple of days. But I just feel it's dangerous to me for our officers.
We only had to do that a few times. They're not on 12-hour days all the time, but we did have to make those accommodations to anticipate large scale protests. But getting back to what you were saying earlier, so certainly I know when Major Kuntz and Lieutenant Allen and I were on that phone call, and your members of your constituents had some asks, and I know that you've seen several of the outdoor roll calls. You've talked about camera placement. I know that I promised to get out there with my mobile officers, and I'm still coming. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to break away yet. But my point is that I think that the beginning of developing strong relationship with the community, particularly your constituents, has begun. And I think that we have heard you, and you've seen that with some of the self-initiated activity. Of course, the lion's share of the efforts of Operation Legend is in your ward. And so, like I said, that's where that was kind of the ward that kind of called the attention to need to get outside resources. But I think that as soon as things begin to normalize, I think you'll see even more of that. But right now, I believe that quite a bit of those asks that your constituents came up with, I would say that they would say that at least some of it has been fulfilled. Maybe not all of it, but some of it. I think that they would say that they've seen some responses. Alderwoman, you're very good at sharing information about what's going on those blocks. Floyd was one that you mentioned. But again, that requires to develop enough information to conduct search warrants on some of those dope houses or what have you. But I mean, it does take time, but I think you have some very active commanders out there that really want to help. And so I would hope that you'd continue to work with them. I believe they continue to want to work with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, and thank you, Chief Hayden. I don't have any questions or comments.
Jeff, you're muted, I think.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I will be turning it back over to you.
Okay. We have Alderwoman Davis and Alderman Dan Gunther. Did either of you have questions of the chief before we move on? Oh, I see Brett and Ryan. I didn't see you in my list of.
I do have a couple of quick questions
Okay.
if neither of the folks with seniority wish to go
So I
first.
was going to go to, is Alderwoman Davis out there? She would just going down the list of seniority.
Oh, I don't have any questions. I'm just listening. Thank you.
Okay, and then Dan, is it you or Brett in seniority?
Dan would have seniority.
So Dan, it's your floor for a brief minute, and then we'll go over to Brett. You have to unmute yourself, though. Dan, you're muted.
I think he's saying he didn't have any questions. I couldn't quite hear him.
Okay, I couldn't read lips on. Okay, so
well,
we're gonna go to Brett. And Brett, you're on, and then that'll conclude us.
Thank you, Chairman Vaccaro, and thank you, Chief Hayden, for being here and answering these questions. I know it's never fun to be on the hot seat for any length of time here. I just have a couple of quick questions, and they're more citywide than they are specific to the 24th Ward. I think we've talked before. The 24th Ward has its own issues, but I think that the issues here kind of pale in comparison to the issues in some other parts of the city, and I'm acutely aware of that. I have had some constituents get to me, and like we discussed earlier, they've said that when they're calling 911, that they're getting messages and busy signals. Some of my colleagues, both out and in this call, have stated the same thing. I think that, even the toughest, most self-reliant people in the city expect 911 to be answered when they call. You've stated that we're 22 dispatchers short. Is that a funding issue or a training issue?
It's a right now. I believe that it's a certainly it's a salary issue, but also what we've found is that a lot of our dispatchers go elsewhere, take the training that they got from us and go elsewhere to be dispatchers, whether it be St. Louis County. As a matter of fact, there's even a disparity in salary between fire dispatchers and city police dispatchers. And so again, I believe that we're making some headway in closing that gap. But again, hey, if I talked about hiring 6 and it's 22 short, that's obviously still a long way to go to bridge that gap.
Totally understood. And then you mentioned that if we're 129 officers down. I know that number is hovered around there for quite some time. When we hire on new officers, now, did they go directly to, do the rookie officers go to the problem areas, or would they start off in, kind of an easier area and then shift experienced officers into the more problematic areas, or is there not any kind of uniform standard on that?
Yeah, they're going to go to wherever the shortages are. So each district, sometimes due to attrition or retirements or what have you, or injuries or what have you, they're going to be distributed based on the shortage in the district.
So do veteran officers get any, I guess, preference on where they patrol? If someone has more time in, can they pick an easier area, I guess?
Yeah, at any given time, an officer can put in a request to go to another district, and as long as there's an exchange between those captains, that can happen. So it's not very difficult to go to another district or another watch, even if you prefer another watch. Okay. They do have to make that known.
And then what is the current authorized force number for Slnpd?
It is 1340,
That's right.
1348.
And Do you know where that number came from?
That comes from our manning table. You know, we actually have a manning table that gives the officer breakdown distribution wise. And so authorized strength is 1348. We've probably operated at least with that number in mind for the past several years. And I think we added about 8 or so within the last year or so.
So it's
8 additional positions.
It's not necessarily tied into the population of the city or anything like that. It's not coming from an external source. It's something that the police department sits down and comes up with what the best number is.
It's mostly budget driven.
Okay.
Yes,
All right. Well, hopefully none of those were terribly brutal questions. That's all I have for you, sir. Thank you for your service. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Chairman Vaccaro.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So Alderman Ryan, I do want to let you know that not only is the police department fully funded, the dispatchers are fully funded. There is a disparity in salaries, and I'm one that believes that the residency is a small part of a bigger problem because now we're just trying to compete where other places don't have residency, but that's only one stumbling block, salaries being another. The other thing, a lot of people are calling 911 from their cell phones. And if you're like on the edge of Shrewsbury, for instance, even though you're calling from your phone, it does kind of route the call unless it's changed in a way that your cell phone pings off of a tower that's not a city tower. And I know maybe the chief could answer that, but I don't know that that's been corrected or not. I know that there was money put toward correcting that. I don't know if the issue was ever corrected, because if I happen to be standing close to Maplewood, Shrewsbury, or whatever, and I'm pinging off one of their towers, it shows me out there, and so their dispatchers may or may not pick it up. Then you got to be transferred to the city.
Right.
Has that been corrected? I know the money was there to try to correct it.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure if I'm aware about the cell tower situation, but I can tell you that if a call goes to a jurisdiction that is not responsible for answering the call, they will immediately transfer it. So that would take a short period of time. It's a button push, if you will, to change it from a county dispatcher to a city dispatcher.
And they, I don't know if you've ever been up there. I had, there's a red light on the wall. Looks like a top of a police car red light. And when there's calls holding, it goes off. And they're very much aware of it. They're short-handed. And people like me that call, you know, if you would call the non-emergency, yeah, there's a good chance you're not going to get through right away. And I'm probably terribly slow about getting facts out. So I probably, if I call, by the time I describe something, and then if there's one accident and 10 people call in for it, those are things that delay it. On the 4th of July, when you know it's fireworks and everybody calls in for gunshots fired. I just wanted to add that, but being 20-something, the one that it's more dangerous for is the police officers, because when you're monitoring 2 or 3 districts that are patched together, when you should be on one, the one that it's most dangerous for is the police officers that are out there doing the job. With that, I'm going to conclude. Did anybody on the committee have any follow-up questions before we let the chief go?
I don't really have a follow-up question, but I noticed Alderwoman Grass is on, and I wasn't sure if he was asked if she had any questions.
Alderwoman Grass, I'm sorry. I knew you were there. I forgot.
Oh, it's okay. No worries. I don't have a question, but thank you for recognizing me. I don't have a question, but I would like to say that I'm really grateful for all the hard work of the women and men on the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. But I'm also in agreement with everything that I've pretty much heard here today. I don't think this model works, and whatever it takes to find a new model, whatever we can do to help, then I think we need to do that, because what is happening right now certainly isn't working. Appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you, one little follow-up to the chief, it's a real simple, easy softball question.
Please, yes.
Chief, what is the policy for mask with the police officers?
So indoors, they wear masks indoors. This is according to the mayor's edict. So they wear masks indoors, and anytime when they're out of doors, when they're within 6 feet of somebody, they should have a mask on.
Okay, so that's the policy. Okay. Do you guys have, I noticed that some police officers have more like, it looks like a scarf almost, and I haven't seen too many masks. Do y'all have a certain type of mask that you guys are wearing?
Yes, sir. We've issued these masks, so that you've seen the I don't know if I hope the blue mask is the most common, and then we have a white mask for commanders that looks like this one. Those are the ones we've issued. We have as long as it hadn't been, as long as it's pretty plain looking, so to speak, we haven't stopped officers from wearing their own masks.
Okay, and out of curiosity, because we haven't heard anything in a while, so I'm going to assume, but we hate to assume with police officers because they're interacting with the public quite a bit. Have we had many police officers test positive in the past 30 days for COVID-19?
We have had officers test positive for COVID-19, and we've also had a considerable quarantine associated with that.
All right, no further questions. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on the committee?
One more question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Go ahead.
Thank you. Commissioner, one last question. I know you mentioned the dispatchers and the pay difference between us and St. Louis County. Do you know that pay scale for county dispatchers?
I want to tell you with a limited amount of certainty that it's probably a $10,000 difference annual.
So if there was a pay increase simply for dispatchers and no other personnel in a police department, would that help eradicate the problem that we're seeing now in dispatch?
It certainly would help. I know that the director of personnel is looking at adjusting Rich Frank is currently looking at adjusting the salary for dispatchers. So that's something that's in the works.
Absolutely. That's all. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Chief, thank you so much. I'm going to send you kind of a list. You know what we're looking for. Please let us know in the next couple of weeks when you and your staff have get with Terry, with our clerk, Terry Kennedy, on a date. Okay, preferably a Tuesday, Wednesday is always our best days as far as meeting. And if you can do that and get back with us in the next couple of weeks, I would appreciate it.
I can do that.
And thank you for your time. And so you're free to stay or go, whatever you'd like. Alderman Boyd, you need to take over and chair. The only other thing coming up is my resolution. And Chief, you're welcome to stay and comment if you like. It is a resolution on the, it's a resolution about violence in the police and other things. And just, Madam Clerk, well, I'm sorry, Chairman, well, now you Chairman Boyd, Vice Chair Boyd, would you have the clerk read the resolution so it's fresh in everybody's mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Clerk, would you please read the resolution in its entirety, please?
Give me a second so I can pull it up.
Okay. And that would be resolution number 46 as for the public, resolution number 46.
Could I ask one question, please?
You may ask.
Chief, how is the other officer that had got injured when the officer got killed and the other officer pulled him to safety? How is he?
He's doing progressing well. His therapy is going well. And so he's expected to return to work. But I spoke with him a few days ago and he's doing quite well.
Okay, thank you.
There she is.
Resolution 46, supporting de-escalation programming for the city of St. Louis. Whereas for some time, this Honorable Board of Aldermen of the city of St. Louis has been acutely aware of the ongoing and at times escalating violence in the city of St. Louis. Whereas this board has ongoing supported and still supports city police having all necessary tools, equipment, staffing, programming, and supplies it's need to enforce the law in a humane, community-sensitive, professional, and equitable manner. Whereas policing and related offices are a significant portion of the annual budget of the city of St. Louis. Whereas most academic reports and analysis of the reasons for crime show that there are clear, identifiable, and significant indicators that are present in communities ravaged by violence that policing alone cannot address and are not designed to address. Whereas this board is aware that the police are oftentimes called to perform duties beyond the scope of their work and training, leaving them open to unfair criticism, attacks, and ridicule. Whereas this board has, through the passage of various types, forms, and kind of legislation, and in words and writing shown year after year that it vehemently opposes violence and strongly supports the efforts of police to keep the peace, that are fair-minded and not steeped in discrimination, disenfranchisement, violation of civil liberties, and inequality. Whereas this board supports good policing and police officers and the de-escalation of violence and realizes that this best happens when there's an overall coordination and application of many types of city and community services that complement and support the community and the workings of the police. And whereas this board has not taken a position supporting defunding the police, but realized that policing alone cannot solve the growing violence in our city, and that additional funding for programming de-escalation of violence must be found and allocated while not crippling the ability of city police departments to do its work. And whereas programming for de-escalation of violence and addressing the indicators of crime must be a priority for the city of St. Louis if it is to be a safe and equitable place to live and truly improve itself for all its citizens to enjoy and prosper. Now, therefore, let it be resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the city of St. Louis that we stand in support of good community policing and police officers, that we recommit ourselves to working to end violence in the city and to urge all city officials to also make it a priority to join with the Board of Aldermen to do all that we can towards the de-escalation of violence in the city in a coordinated and organized approach, that we also address and help eliminate the underlying reasons for violence. We further direct the clerk of this board to send a copy of this resolution to those deemed appropriate by its sponsor. Introduced this 18th day of September 2020, the Honorable Joseph Vaccaro, Alderman of the 23rd Ward.
Mr. Chairman, Alderman Vaccaro, you are recognized on Resolution 46.
So what Resolution 46 does, something that I can tell you has come up in my ward. People think that the Board of Aldermen as a whole supports defunding the police. I can tell you I do not support defunding the police. In fact, the opposite. I think that we need to get social workers into the police department. We need to add to their budget so that we can give them the proper tools, that the combination of policing and social work would be more the answer. And this is just, it's a resolution. I don't know how anybody would be against this one. I tried to word it in a way that would make some sense, that as a Board of Aldermen, at least, and again, not everybody might not sign on to this, but at least myself, I believe defunding the police is not the answer, but giving them the tools necessary. And I'm not talking about machine guns. I'm talking about resources. I like what President Reed's doing with the money that would help maybe get some of these crimes cleared up. And I don't disagree that maybe some social workers, I don't think we need social workers in lieu of police. I think that the police department, we should work with them to get them some social workers so that when they see something ahead of time, because they're the ones that are going to see it, that maybe some of this could be de-escalated by them instead of sending a police officer out where there's a family dispute that could grow into something bigger. They send someone out to maybe with an officer to maybe start working with the neighbors, working to see if there's any programs. A lot of times, bills and things like that make it tough, and certainly cause people to tend to fight and be aggravated. But that's my intent on this bill. I'm open to any questions, and I would hope we could pass this out of committee.
Okay. I'll go around and take questions, but I want to say this. I don't think most of America really understands what defund the police mean. I mean, for the most part, I'm not sure I always understand what defund the police mean. I certainly support social workers working with the police department, but I'm not sure what that really looks like. Because a social worker, I'm not sure if we would expect them to carry a gun if they arrive in the same car with a police officer. This is a lot of conversation that have escalated into this narrative that we need to defund the police, we need social workers and so on and so forth, but no one has really truly explained it in a way that it makes sense for the people in my neighborhood. Because I'll tell you, speaking on behalf of the 22nd Ward residents, defund the police, they're like, what is wrong with you? What do you mean defund the police? There are narratives that people say we're over-policed. If you engage in criminal behavior, I would think that you would say you're over-policed in a particular neighborhood. But I can tell you that the people in my neighborhood don't feel like they're over-policed. They can't get the police to respond in a timely manner because they're so busy doing a whole bunch of other stuff, responding to calls. I shouldn't say stuff, police work. I don't want to be demeaning. I am curious to ask the chief, and thank you, chief, for staying around, because this is a conversation that we probably really need to have and get a better understanding as a community. What does this mean? And to you. And then there's the other conversation of what does it mean to the group that created this narrative? Because there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of inconsistency, there's a lot of double talk in defunding the police and what it means. And so I'm just not clear. And how, Chief, my question to you is, how do you see social workers being a benefit to the police department? And what does that look like when there's a call and a need for a social worker?
So no, I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts. So right now we have a cops and commissioning program going on in North Patrol in District 6. And so what it means is that if we have a person that's in a crisis, a mental crisis or what have you, we can take an officer, we can take a social worker with us to that call, and in some ways do a partial handoff. With the exception of the person being violent, you can actually hand that person off to a social worker. The thing that I might mention though is that the social worker can't go alone on that call. They're going to need a police officer to go with them because, again, they're going to want to enter an environment that's considered to be safe. And so, while I appreciate and honor the opportunity to work along with social workers, sometimes it sounds like the national conversation is social workers instead of police officers. And so certainly adding social workers to our efforts, I think would be helpful to any city. But when you say, but the question is, can you take police resources that you would normally have and take money that would be used for otherwise for police services and use them for social services? I don't see you doing one without the other. And so what I would say is certainly adding social services, but not at the expense of taking budgets away from police departments, particularly when you don't have a lot of latitude within the budget. Our budget happens to be 90% tied into salaries and benefits. So a phrase like defunding the police in St. Louis is essentially saying I want less officers. Now some cities have a lot more built into their budget, and it doesn't affect salaries and benefits as much. But our budgets are very lean, and so a salary benefit based budget like the St. Louis Police Department, like I said, 90%. The other 10% is cars and technology and computers and things like that. So we don't have a lot of fluff or fat in our budget. And so again, in St. Louis, that would mean less officers. But I do appreciate the opportunity to have social workers to which we can pass off persons that are undergoing a mental crisis. I think is something very helpful.
So can I comment?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
So that's what I'm trying to say. Defund the police, whether it means get rid of the pay or even reallocate resources, isn't to me an answer. I think adding to them and giving them the necessary, just like the chief said, if a police officer goes out and they know it's a mental kind of thing, rather than having a social worker go with the police officer. I'm not saying we need that many, but we should have some, and some of it might just be going to a family and taking some of the stress off. Maybe mom or dad hasn't been working, are they having one of the kids is an issue, something that a social worker is more trained to take care of. I don't even, I've heard different narratives of defunding the police, reallocating the resources. Well, if you take any money away, look like they did, they took $2 million out of overtime, which we're going to end up putting back in anyway, because what are you going to do when it gets to the overtime? Say, oh, well, send all the police home. I agree with the chief on this. There isn't any fluff. In fact, there's no fluff in any of our budget, whether it's sidewalks or streets or anything. There's no fluff to sit there and say, reallocate resources. We need to, use money like again, Board Bill 114 to help. But I honestly believe that adding some social workers, which means we'll have to come up with money. We have to figure that out. But if we're going to spend $7 million on body cameras, and they've heard 2 and 3 and 4, even 5, and I hear it might be more than 5 now, $1 million on body cameras, I start beginning to believe, are we better off using that money? And again, this is just to get the conversation started. That's why I would hope we can get it out. It isn't a board bill. It's a resolution that just says we're going to be working toward certain goals. But I just wanted to say that in answer to what I've heard on defunding the police, even if it's just taking money away and moving it somewhere else, which we already did $2 million of.
Okay, Vaccaro, let's go ahead and take questions from the other members of the committee, if that's okay.
Oh, you're chairman.
Okay. All right, Alderwoman Howard.
Yes, I do have a question. I don't know that, we're talking, this is a resolution. We're talking about finding funds and finding assistance for police. I think if we quit operating in silos, we have a health department, we have social services. Maybe we need to fluff them up, but I think that, I think many times the police just need to access what's there. And I'm not sure You know, I'm not on the inside, but I know many times children's services are contacted and some other services are contacted. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have a whole city full of services here that I think, you know, if we use our good sense, we could activate. I'm not sure that I'm not sure that having a social worker right along with police is the most prudent thing to do. That's one more person they have to worry about that may or may not be armed, that, you know, I don't know. And I don't know that a social worker's preparation prepares them to deal with some of the situations they might find themselves into. I don't know. But I think we need to explore other avenues and activate some of the resources we currently have and see if we can't share those with the police. I mean, part of the reason we took the police back, you know, from the state was to economize, I believe, and to, you know, offer full range of services. Let's not jump the gun here and go out hiring a bunch of things and making more bureaucracy when we could probably utilize some of the resources we have. That's about all I have to say.
Can I respond again, please?
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman Tamika Hubbard.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman and members of the committee. I guess I'm concerned, unless there's a board bill out there to actually defund the police, then I'm concerned as to why we have the resolution. I think that the bulk of us share the same sentiments of how important our police department is and how they often operate with the strapped budget. And I guess I just probably wouldn't necessarily want to take a vote on whether or not we should, if it's not an issue for us, because that narrative that's out there about defunding the police, it has come from a certain faction of people. But if you look at the boards that our body is comprised of, and how we try to support our police, and how we know that, of course, there may be some need in some areas for a social worker, but I believe that, like what my colleague said, that, you know, the resources that are already out there available, those should be used. And then you don't even know if it would be a environment conducive for that. I just wouldn't want us to become reactionary to the fodder that's out there in the world with this whole notion of defunding the police. I definitely don't support that. And I guess I'm concerned about voting on this, because I don't even want us to jump out there and really address the issue when I feel like it's not one for us. Now, if someone brings forth a board bill saying defund the police, then I'll definitely be a no vote on that. But I don't think that we should do something symbolically to counter that when it's not really here yet for us. And then I'm all open for the conversation, though. I'm all open for some resources, if available, could be allocated toward that. But I don't, I guess I just don't believe in really taking a stand on something, or as a body making a consensus on where we are at with that. Because to me, it's like, if you push this forward, if you take it, bring it before the full board, there's going to be a lot of commentary on it. And it's like, as a city, I don't think that we are there yet. And I definitely support and appreciate all the resources that we have in our police department in its limited time right now, as far as lack of funding and lack of resources and revenue coming in it. So I guess I would have preferred us just having a conversation, if we were going to have it, about what we can do with our current budget, opposed to doing a resolution. And that's all I have on that. Thank you.
You're muted.
Alderwoman Pam Boyd. Alderwoman Pam Boyd, you're on mute.
I'm here. I hear you.
You're on there. Some kind of way.
Okay. I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, is she here?
Thank you. No questions.
All righty, and so we circle back around. Alderman, Mr. Chairman, Alderman Vaccaro, kind of explain your intent on
So
resolution, what brought us here, and where do you see us going with this resolution as the impact? What do you look
I
at?
want it to be to be a conversation starter. I can say that this was initiated on a ride to the country with my son, who is 23 years on the department. He works hard, he respects people. But if, and you know, as older people, when they talk about, oh, we're overpaid, you don't do anything, we need less of you, you know, you get to that point that you say, you know what, why am I even bothering? So you got a lot of police officers, whatever you take out of defunding the police, that think, you know, why are we out there and we're beating ourselves up and we're trying really hard and we can't even get respect. You hear, if you listen to KMOX or different, they say no elected officials are standing up for the police. And so I put a resolution together that I felt was respectful of the police. It says, you know what, there's a lot of this talk's going on, but I know that I, for one, and just like Alderwoman Hubbard said, are not a vote, but it's a resolution to say, you know what, we support the police, that we're not against them. The last resolution that we did supporting the police went down in flames. I really would wish this one does not, but it's I thought it was pretty simple. It supports the police. It says to the police, look, we're not, and you know, I could have did a board bill against defunding the police, you know, and then just made everybody sign on if you're for it or against it. I just thought, in my mind, and in listening to, you know, my son, who I have a lot of respect for, he's a good guy, who goes out on these homicide scenes and who, you know, has to deal with people that are afraid to talk to the police. I mean, even when we talk about cameras on the police, I mean, I have to say, you know, and I know a lot about the 911 system, again, because my daughter has been there for probably about 25 years, and she's a supervisor up there. And, you know, I hate to say, you know, my kids, because I don't want to throw them under the bus in any way, but I can tell you, in talking to Clint, who's always upbeat about almost anything, is just, you know, just tired, just saying, you know, and again, we get that same abuse. And I don't know how many of us feel that we're just a bunch of slugs, that we're just on the payola of the city, that that all the aldermen are out there corrupt. All the aldermen are corrupt, that we're all on the take. How many times have you ever heard that and just said, you know what, I don't even know why I'm bothering. But we get that, and it's offensive. I can tell you that all the aldermen that I know work hard for their neighborhoods. And every one of us, we need 28 aldermen. And the part that we don't, there's going to be such buyer's remorse in this city when they find out how screwed up it's going to be. But we get targeted all the time. And whether, it's offensive to me when they say that we're all corrupt. I work hard, and just like you guys do, I work hard. And so when we say defund the police, I think it's a direct slap in the face to the police. But I didn't want to do something that put everybody on whether or not they support. All this thing says is, at this point, the Board of Aldermen has not even brought up, that we haven't even taken a position on defunding the police. This resolution doesn't call to not, it's pretty simple. It just says we haven't taken up we haven't even taken a position on it. It says we support the police, we're against crime.
Right.
So I see it as probably the most mild resolution, but at the same time, it supports the police, which I strongly support the police.
All right, I have one last question, and then we'll let you go ahead and close the vote on this, Mr. Chairman. Just occurred to me, Chief. You know, a lot of the police officers are working a lot of overtime, and I would imagine there's a lot of stress. You know, and I'm just a little concerned about their mental well-being. Is there a system in place where they can what's the word I'm looking for, decompress, or, you know, just kind of let it out, kind of, sort of? I mean, because I can only imagine, you know, going from a murder scene to a murder scene to a murder scene, and you're 12 hours and 13 hours. It's got to be, you know, mentally draining at some time. So what are we doing to support our police officers as it relates to their mental health?
Yes, sir. I'm glad you asked that. So certainly, we've always had the Employment Assistance Services, EAP. That's still, we have a healthcare provider that provides that, but we also reach out to officers. We have like a shooting support team, officers that have gone through shootings on a team that help other officers cope with the fact that they may be involved when an officer involved shooting incident. And then we have a coordinator, Lieutenant Panzer, as well as Sergeant Dorn. Both of them work on a team that actually offers officers and encourages officers to talk to other people, as well as provide avenues by which they confer with counselors and that. But no, very good point. And naturally, we have been through a lot of the trauma that we've gone through the summer. Those services have been utilized very extensively, and of course, that we always have the chaplain program as well.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna go ahead and call for a vote on resolution number 46. I move to pass resolution 46 out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Been moved and second by the Alderman from the 14th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad, Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Chairman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad. 6 aye votes.
All right, resolution 46 passed out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Alderwoman Grass, I am so sorry. I'm going to apologize. I meant to come back to you to ask if you had any comments or questions about the resolution. So I want to just publicly apologize to you for that. I didn't come back to you. So
No worries.
all right, I'll turn it back over to the Mr. Chairman, Alderman Vaccaro.
First off, I would like to thank everybody, Tamika Hubbard and everyone that has supported me on things, even when it's not where they want to be. You know, she smiles and she makes me smile. But this was, I believe, it's a tame resolution, but I just can't thank everybody enough. Sometimes you make me want to cry for real. That, you know, even though it feels a little bit tougher, you know, and I don't know that it gets debated on the full floor. I think it just comes out of the committee, and Jeffrey, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it comes out as that it passed out of the committee. And it might open conversations and it might not, but I really appreciate it. And Chief, I don't know how you feel either way, but I think this sends a message to the officers that we do care. And yes, do we get mad when they don't respond? Yes, because we're the ones that get yelled at. But I don't think there's one person, at least on this committee, that doesn't respect you. I may jump on you, but I respect you in the work that the guys do. And that's all. I just was a comment, but I want to thank the committee for supporting this. And you guys seem to be with me when others, and you know the group we're talking about, don't seem to be with me sometimes. Anyway, but God bless, thank you. Is there any other questions from anybody? Chief, would you like to add anything or?
No, I think that my takeaway from this meeting is that we really have to improve a lot of communication. And I don't know if that's, I guess what I want to start with is by saying, hey, I do care. I care about your response to the community. I think sometimes that people don't exactly understand. I encourage you to utilize us more often. I don't think you should have to explain why this or that thing happens on the police department. I think that's something that the captains and lieutenants and the officers should be able to explain. But that being said, what I'm going to do is make sure that each captain and major reach out to you. In other words, I don't know, some of you still may be having virtual meetings, some of you may be having personal meetings, but so much of frustration. What I saw today is certainly a lack of communication. I think the police department will make that first step toward creating a better avenue of communications, because some of the things that you all are asking about and are concerned about are absolutely legitimate, and there shouldn't be any confusion about how our district captain is addressing your concerns. So I'm going to ask our captains, our majors, I'm going to ensure that Colonel Warnicki insisted that happen. And so expect a call from our commanders reaching out to you all, so that a lot of this gray area can be cleared up. There's no reason why you wouldn't understand why what initiatives that I plan on a district. Hey, the district captains run those districts, and so certainly as the top police officer, the point I'm trying to make is that, hey, you're asking and bringing up very reasonable things. There's no reason why you don't have answers, and those questions can be directed directly to those captains, and the constituents can actually hear from them. And so some of the frustration I clearly see is communication, and we're going to improve that.
Chief, thank you. Is anyone else, any comments? Having not heard any comments, we'll go ahead and adjourn. And again, thank you for putting up with me. I know.
All right.
Anyway, I need a whatever to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Well, God bless. Thank you all. Chief, kind of appreciate if you get that for us in the next couple of weeks. And Tamika, thank you.
Thank you. I will.